Imagine taking your generosity to the next level, impacting more lives and leaving a godly legacy for generations to come. Get ideas and strategies to do just that when you listen to these personal stories from high-level kingdom champions. The Kingdom Investor Podcast showcases business leaders who have moved from success to significance, sharing how they use worldly wealth for kingdom impact. Discover how they grew in generosity, impacted more lives, and built godly legacies. You'll find motivation, inspiration, and practical steps to grow as a kingdom investor.
Hello and welcome to the Kingdom Investor Podcast. Today I have with me Stuart and David, and we are so excited to get to know them and unpack their story, really hear how God is using them to advance his kingdom. So David and Stuart, would you say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from?
Yeah, sure thing. Great. Stu, take it. All right. So we are both here in the Denver, Colorado metro. I chose to live on the other side of Denver from David, so we're not too close to each other. So he's out like over at my house every single day, knocking on my door. But
how close are you to Arvada?
David's really close. Okay. I'm about probably 30 minutes away. So I live in Parker, Colorado, and David is in Lakewood, Colorado.
Okay.
And we both recently retired from the Navy after 20 years and both moved our families back to Colorado, where we are hub now. So we're actually in offices right next to each other. And yeah, glad to be here, man.
Awesome. So Stuart or David, do you want to share a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Stuart he likes to tell things like half-truths, we call them.
All right.
And really, I lobbied the city of Lakewood and the school system of Jefferson County to ensure that his family could not establish roots anywhere near me. So that's the true story. It took a lot of work, years and years of planning and preparation, but finally the city of Lakewood officially banned the Grazier family from our premises. But all joking aside, Stu and I, we did just retire after 20 years of Navy service, but he didn't mention that we were roommates at the Naval Academy. So we've known each other for 25 plus years. We were best buds back at the Naval Academy. And then you fast forward and all through the years, we've been involved in each other's lives, best men at each other's weddings and being around when our kids were born, and had just maintained a very strong relationship. With 2018, so 4 years ago-ish, we decided to go into business together. And so we'd been cultivating this relationship for, at that point, 20 years, and decided to join in holy matrimony of business and become a couple in that realm. And really the foundational relationship, we're extremely blessed because I think it's very unique to have such a tight relationship with somebody, but also to be able to translate that over to a business relationship, which oftentimes is vastly different. So we've been doing a variety of businesses that I'm sure we'll get into here shortly. And it's just been an absolute blessing, pleasure to be able to do these things with my best friend. I would absolutely not do them by myself. I'm a very team partner-driven person. So
that's good to hear. It's good to hear. So Stu, would you paint a picture of kind of where you grew up, what your background is, and just kind of your history?
Yeah, of course. So I was born in Dallas, Texas, lived there for about 12 years. My mom and my dad divorced when I was 5 years old. So I grew up for a large majority of my life without a dad. He actually moved away. And so it was basically living, my sister and I, she's 2 years younger than me. We were living with my mom. She remarried when I was 12, and then we moved down to Central Texas, kind of in between Waco and Austin in a small town. Went to high school there, and then from there decided to go to the Naval Academy. Went to the Naval Academy where David and I were roommates, and then commissioned there, joined the Navy, and became a pilot. Flew helicopters for 10 years. Flew Boeing 737s for a couple of years, and then just moved all around. I got married in 2008 to my beautiful bride, Crystal. And then we have 2 children. We have a daughter, Colin, she's 7.5, and a son, Wells, who's 4.5.
David, do you want to mirror that or one up that?
Well, and I want to give props to Collins. She also runs a podcast, which is pretty rad. So if you guys haven't listened to that, I would highly encourage you go check it out.
it
She's
called?
actually
It's called
what's that?
It's called Kid Books Podcast. It's on Spotify, and she basically just finds, she loves to read, so she just finds her favorite books and she reads them and then kind of asks some questions and engages the audience. And so we got her excited about that. It was our summer project this year, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's so cool. And you said, how old is she?
She's 7.5, almost 8.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, what's beautiful about it is she actually reads at a higher level than Stuart. So that's also just
Somewhat true.
a huge
Somewhat true.
But yeah, so my history, my parents actually divorced when I was 2. And so I actually grew up, they both started moving a lot for their respective careers. They remarried relatively quickly. And I grew up switching houses every year. So I'd go to a different location every year. And what's interesting is people, I tell that now and they're like, oh, it must have been horrible. It must have been hard. I mean, that's how I grew up. I think it made me very suited for the military life, for moving. That was never a challenge for me to change locations. And actually, I was just talking to my wife the other day. I'm like, I'm a little bit nervous when we hit that 3-year mark here in Colorado that we're not going to be moving, because it's literally my entire life. When I went to the Naval Academy for college, that was the first time I'd ever lived somewhere for 4 years straight. And it was an interesting childhood, but it was a huge blessing. It really helped me to create it made me into, I guess I was probably inclined to be extroverted, but it really helped me to develop relationships quickly. And that's something that has served for up until this point. My choice of people I choose relationships with is obviously could be questioned with the Stu here, but everything has a blessing, right? There's a blessing in everything. And I'm a firm believer in that. So I grew up all over the place. I claim California as kind of where I'm from. And that's just simply because I graduated high school there. And then from there, I went to the Naval Academy. I went into the intel field. I was a cryptologic warfare officer. And basically that means a fancy title for everything I did. Can't really talk about on this podcast. It's all classified, and that makes it very easy to do a job description. And so for me, we moved around a bunch. I married a woman who loves adventure, and we've been all over the world, stationed all over the world, started having babies in 2011. So my daughter is 11 years old. I have a son who's 9. And then I have another son who is 5. Mm-hmm. And that's my story. And now we're here in Colorado and planting roots, which is at 42 years old. This is a new experience for me.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was in the Air Force. And so I know every 18 months we'd move pretty much as a kid. And some of us liked it, some of us didn't. I think it was a good experience though.
Yeah, no, we loved it. And it's really developed a sense of adventure in my kids, my wife. So it's something that we're intending to carry on through travel and experiences that I think it's a great thing. It opens our horizons. If you haven't gone overseas, I recommend all your listeners go overseas and see how other people live. It's pretty rewarding experience.
So after you guys got out of the Navy and got into business, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, we actually started business while we were still in the Navy.
Oh,
we both were independently kind of doing real estate as a side hustle, if you will. I think we both have a very entrepreneurial spirit, and we started learning about real estate, dabbling in it. I think we each tried very different strategies. We owned houses, we turned them into rentals. And over time, as we just continued to talk, we decided that we wanted to do something like real estate and be a business owner, be an entrepreneur after we got out of the military. And that transition from full-time active duty military to civilian life can be very challenging for a lot of people. And so we wanted to really get a head start on that. And so those talks started really early prior to us getting out. And we'd both been dabbling in real estate. We both had some really hard lessons learned in real estate. And because of those hard lessons learned, we kind of came up with this model that we thought would be way better to help others learn about real estate and invest in real estate. One of the big challenges for us being in the Navy is we're typically stationed on coasts, and it's typically a lot more expensive there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the numbers don't really work from the perspective of just kind of long-term rentals. And so we found a market through David's horrible experience, some investing that we can tell if we have time for, but we wanted to help others get into real estate and use our lessons learned and hard knocks and then serve that purpose.
All right. So I think we have time for one hard knock story. You got a really hairy one?
Oh man. Where do I start?
Where do I start?
For me, and it was really interesting because I had chosen a company to do turkey real estate with in Milwaukee. And I talked to the owner, and Stu and I are huge on relationships. And so everything I go into, I try to create a relationship, understand where they're coming from, and help them understand what I'm looking for. And then we try to find the commonalities and all that good stuff. And this guy was very big on, oh, I'm a Christian, I love Jesus and all these things, and which resonated. I'm not one to judge anybody, but I would say his fruit is not something I experienced. But that being said, just as a kind of final thing, so we actually settled out of court they gave me a check for $25,000 on rehabs that they didn't do. Like, so they literally would go and they do a video of the house, and they'd avoid things like the dates on water heaters and say, hey, we replaced this water heater for you. And even went as far as like scratching the dates out of the water heaters. And so it just was a systemic lack of integrity, and it resonated throughout I bought 3 properties from them. And it just was a all around terrible experience that I thank God for almost on a daily basis, because if it wasn't for that, I don't think we would have started our business. We wouldn't have been driven to try to create a better experience for our network. Yeah. And we may not have jumped into business together, which has now morphed into something vastly different that I believe God has driven us in a different direction. But I don't know if any of that would have happened if we both didn't have these absolutely terrible experiences in real estate. And we both had them at the same time with the same type of thing, different parts of the country, but just very shady, a lot of lies, a lot of intentional deceit. It was really interesting to observe that aspect of business and, quite frankly, human nature.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty wild. I've got a couple of stories, but I don't know. That one probably tops them.
Yeah, it was pretty special. It was a pretty special experience. And maybe it's good because God knew that I'm so hard-headed. I'd really need like an extreme to drive me to do something else. If it was something minor, like a $5,000 thing, not that $5,000 is minor, but in the context of 4 houses it is, I don't know if I would have jumped as quickly into running a business, especially since we were full-time active duty at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me how you guys got ramped up in real estate, and what did that look like, your partnership and everything, and what are you guys doing now?
Yeah. So those lessons learned caused us to really sit down and talk about what we had learned, what we wanted to do, and how we could serve others. And we started with just those simple concepts of integrity and looking at our core values and figuring out how we wanted to use business and real estate in general to help others. So David primarily had gone through this experience, and he had to, really out of requirement to go out and find new people to help him with these properties that were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he started building out a team on his own. He had to basically fire everyone from that turnkey company and go find other people that could help him. And so through that, we said like, hey, we've heard a lot of bad stories about turnkey companies. I had some pretty bad experiences myself. And we started building out this model, and we started with our core values and what we wanted to do with real estate to serve a bigger purpose. One, to help our network of primarily military and veteran investors get into this space, educate, offer opportunities, help them start building passive income streams so their transition out isn't as hard. But also, we wanted to give. We wanted to make giving and tithing a huge part of our business. And so we came up with the title of Storehouse 310, which comes from Malachi 3:10 in the Bible. And in our business model, we said that the first 10% of all of our profits would go to nonprofit organizations that we supported. We started a donor advised fund. And so we just automatically would make that a part of the business process, where we would buy, rehab, and sell a house, and the first 10% would go into the DAP. So we started that in 2018. We started just with a few friends and family. We borrowed some money to buy that first house from one of David's really close friends. And then from there, we just kind of started telling people about it, and word of mouth spread. And they kind of figured out that we had a pretty good product, and it just like blew up. Like I think we sold 25 houses the first year of business, like 50 the next year. And it's been on about that pace since. So it was pretty interesting to see.
So were you guys flipping houses or?
Yeah. So what we basically were doing was buying off market houses, primarily single families and a duplex or two. And we would use private money for every single house. They were all off market. They all needed major rehabs. We would buy them, rehab them, turn them over to a property management company that we vetted there in Milwaukee, got renters in place. And then, so we basically had a full turnkey product, a house that was fully rehabbed, rented, property management in place. Then we'd sell that off to another investor who wanted that turnkey rental property.
Gotcha. Way cool.
So
So
one thing I wanted to emphasize, Stu mentioned core values and these things, and we kind of skirt over those a little bit sometimes. And for those of you out there listening and really, whether you're entrepreneurial, you want to build a business, you've already built a business, this is always germane, something we can always go back to. But for Stu and I, we came up with the core values of service, giving, integrity, and laughter. And that took a long time, right? But we did that before we bought a deal because we knew, and maybe some of it was from our military background and having a vision and a mission and things that we knew to drive a team forward. But for us, it was important to highlight, okay, what are we doing this for? Like what are we doing this for individually? And two, are we compatible to do this together? Because if, you can imagine you jump into a business with somebody, you're like, hey, I want to give 10+% of our income back to God. Well, you better be equally yoked. You better agree on that whole idea of faith and giving. And then it really also drove all of our decisions. It drove how we dealt with hard circumstances. Stu and I'd be a fool to think that Stu doesn't have a ton of opportunities outside of what we do together. So we talk about that. He's a very capable individual. He can go fly planes. He's got other mastermind stuff going on. There's all kinds of just focus on real estate. But through our core values, we had one of these conversations 2 weeks ago about, okay, dude, like, here's what you guys are going on. Here's what I got going on. Here's where I want to be. Here's where you want to be. Like, is this still where are the conflicts? Let's address them. Right. And then ultimately handle them with integrity and ultimately laugh about it. Right. Laughter is a core value. And if you hear our podcast or you hear the way that we interact, there's a lot of laughter all the time. Usually at Stu's expense, but there's laughter. And these are all based on biblical principles that were also very important to us. So tied to specifically taking the effort to tie a core value to a verse that drives that and then build out those core. I won't go into it now, but each of those core values has like a list of 5 different things that prioritizes what it means to be service minded. What does it mean to be a giving business and individuals? What does integrity mean? What is laughter? And it literally has bullet points that go down from there.
Yeah.
All that was done before we bought our first deal. And I think that's really critical to highlight and point out.
So where did you guys get those core values? Is that something that was kind of instilled in you at a young age, or where do you draw those from?
Yeah. It's just what we had. This was an exercise for us to dig internally and then to match and figure out where those core values met. And I think it was just having strong convictions in who we were and who we wanted to be. And it's a blessing, right? It's a blessing that Stu and I are like-minded in that way and very growth-minded oriented, because it wasn't something like I didn't get those necessarily. Those weren't military things that were instilled. Those weren't necessarily family values that we talked about in my family, at least. This was something that at that point, a 16-year military career, life and real estate and all the things we were doing had built us to this point of, hey man, this is what's important to me, being self-aware of what's important. And then just acknowledging the other half's contribution. Much like we joke, but it's like a marriage. It really is like a marriage.
And we're very different, honestly. I was an engineer in college.
I can see that.
Yeah. Very like checklist style, like got to have everything planned out. And David he was an English major. So very, very lovey-feely, squishy, loves to read books and write, lives on the clouds at 50,000 feet. But when you put those two together, you need both of those in a business. And we have a lot of different opinions and thoughts and feelings towards things, but it married up pretty well when we were looking at how to grow a business.
So you guys really are taking giving seriously. What was the genesis story to that? And where did that come from? Why do you guys want to be generous?
And I think that comes from kind of my upbringing. For me personally, I saw something in my family. They were both generous, and not so maybe much from a monetary perspective, but both sides of my family gave a ton of their time, a ton of their effort, and put their heart and soul into people. I saw my mom as a single mom, just poured everything into us as her children, and to almost like a detriment, right? I saw my dad running a business and pouring into his employees and really digging in at his expense to give. And so I think that from a very young person saw that, and it just kind of pulled on me, and it was a value that I kind of grew up with. And then I wouldn't claim to be a Christian early on in life. I really didn't kind of find that faith until after college. And through those experiences and those values, as I started to get into the Word and get, be pulled by God, I think that's when that really came out of me even more so.
That's good.
Yeah, and I mean, that's for me, it was just, I've always been a spiritual person, and I've also always been a rule follower. So as I matured in my faith, and really college was a very formative time for me in my walk. And once I left college and I started just spending more time in the Word and seeing the call to be a good steward, and specifically Malachi 3:10, the 10%, and that whole premise, but really from Jesus's perspective, just being generous, right? Because Jesus said, "Give it all." And so, and really wrapping my mind around the fact that, and this is evolving even today, obviously, but the idea that God is everything that I have is from Him anyways, and I'm only going to have it for a very finite amount of time, and I'll be judged by how I use it. It being time, money, resources, where I give my effort, my love, all these things, and so just having an eternal mindset that this stuff is so temporary, and I'm just borrowing it, right? And all the money, all the whatever I have it's just going to pass to somebody else. Whether it's my family or it's going to go somewhere else. And so having that mindset of eternal mindset has really shaped and helped me to get to this point of wanting to be a giver. But selfishly, very selfishly, how great does it feel to give? I mean, how much does that feed your soul? And when you see somebody celebrate and enjoy the gift that you've provided, whatever that is, very selfishly, let's be honest here, it feels really good. And I think that's by design. And so generosity also has some very tangible impacts to us, our mental health and our spiritual health that are less honorable than being generous and very much self-centered. And so there's that aspect of it too.
What is your favorite place to give? Or do you have any stories about memorable experiences which you got a chance to give and it just really lit you up or just brought you great joy?
And so we've found some pretty amazing organizations that we've supported in this journey through our business. And like David said earlier on, we really try to get to know the individuals who are running these companies and sit down with them and see where they're impacting people. And one of the first organizations that we chose was kind of on our hearts. We had some classmates commit suicide in the military. PTSD is a really big issue. And we found an organization in Texas called Warriors Heart. And they have a large ranch where they help military veterans, first responders come and get support with that issue.
Yeah.
I had the chance to go down to the ranch and walk the property and kind of see everything that they were doing and talk with the founders of the organization and just seeing like for real, like what they're doing, like the tangible stuff they're doing to impact people and how they can really help these individuals and see all the different programs they're doing. But they have like a huge metal shop where like military, like the guys that like they just go in there and just like make things and just bang on metal, make these cool like axes and all these cool things. And just going to the ranch and being there and seeing it, like to me was super cool to see like, hey, we're maybe a small part of it, but we're a part of it. And to see that we see like the actual impact that we're doing is pretty cool to me.
Yeah. And there's another organization that we have gotten to know the founders very well. And it's called Exodus Road. The focus is on human trafficking. And so that for us, just to see, we have a heart for just people in general who are exploited. We feel there's a call to action to try to address and to try to counter just that. It's huge, right? The number of modern day slaves is 40 plus million. I mean, then we're talking about children here for a lot of it too. And so that was something we were very passionate about giving to. And I'll tell you what's really, it's a really good question because this is something we've been digging in recently on not just, I feel like the bar for giving a lot of times stops at money, which is very important. It's very important. And I will not downplay that in any way. But sometimes, a lot of times, time and being present and giving of our busy schedules has a bigger impact. And so Stu and I have actually just the last couple of days been like, hey, we love giving money and we want to be committed to that. And we will be committed to that. Not want to, we are committed to that. But where can we give our time? Where can we bring the gifts that God has given us and pour into other people's lives very directly, hands-on impact?
Yeah.
And show, because checks are relatively nameless outside the name on the check. It's not, a lot of times it's not the full impact. But if you get there and it's hard to give a hug through a check, right? But the power of a hug especially someone like me who loves hugging, the power of touch and voice and presence is so real and tangible and powerful that we're looking for ways to do that more as well. And we found some outlets through serving other men specifically. And I say serving, we're also raising this mastermind to support our families. It's not free. The act and the conversations and bringing men together has been so powerful, way more powerful than we've experienced through writing checks. And so the things that we're focused on now are in our businesses, and we can get into that as well, but where our business focus is going is into these more very relationally driven, hands-on, challenging, fellowship-focused endeavors.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I want to dive into that a little bit further, because what we found, we both love real estate. Like, we both walking houses, looking at what needs to be fixed up, taking a dirty, ugly house and making it nice again, and understanding that there's going to be people living in there, and that's all good. But what we kind of experienced through these last 4 years of running this company was it's very transactional, and it still is very money driven. And as much as we felt like we were helping others build their income streams, build their wealth, there was something missing. There was like a fulfillment that we weren't getting out of that, and it was relationships, and we wanted to be building stronger relationships with individuals and helping them grow in other ways besides just money. And so we kind of looked internally again and figured out like where our struggles are as middle-aged men with wives and children and all the challenges that come with that, and the faith struggles we have. And as we get older, we start to lose our friends because we just get so focused on our jobs and our families, and we don't have fun anymore. And so we kind of started building out this stuff of what we were looking for and what we wanted and what we needed. And we invited eight guys, 10 guys, David, to come and just start meet with us on a weekly Zoom call and just like start talking through some of that stuff. Because men they're not really good at talking about that kind of stuff. And so we kind of just started building out this men's mastermind group, and we called it the Storehouse Mastermind. And it's been so fruitful. There's been so many amazing conversations, and there's been so many breakthroughs, seeing some of these men just completely transform on, and not only just faith stuff, but we bring up stuff like pornography and not having any friends and living in a fatherless world. And there's so many things that have come out of it that we found a lot of joy out of.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the entrepreneurial spirit, when we went in, we invited these guys, and we knew it wasn't going to be another church group. We knew it wasn't going to be, not that there's anything wrong with the church group, but we knew that we wanted it to be this thing that created opportunities to give and to serve and to laugh and to do these things and hang out, right? And so we really started from the perspective of, hey, let's find this mastermind. Let's find this group that'll feed us in this way. And then we were like, dude, we're entrepreneurs, man. Like, let's just create it. Like, I don't have time to look for something that's going to be exactly what I want it to be. Let's just build it. Mm. And if we truly believe that there's value there, which is what I believe should be a huge driver behind being an entrepreneur and a business builder and a giver, is if you're creating this value, God is going to bless. And if he's put that on our heart, then it's going to grow. And yesterday, it seems so simple, but yesterday, one of the guys said, hey, I actually told a little fib to my work because we had a virtual meeting during the mastermind meeting. And he was like, this conversation was just too powerful. I couldn't leave. So I told a little fib to not go to my work meeting because this is feeding and it was just a very affirming, but also God uses other people to speak to us. And Stu and I were in tears. If you ever join the mastermind, which I encourage, if you're interested, all you men out there, we do have a lot of crying. We cry a lot, but even that, it's okay. And there's been a lot of tears, but we're told as men that we don't cry. And that's such a lie. And we cry together. And it's such a beautiful thing because there is value there. And we came at it from a perspective, we want this, but hey, we're entrepreneurs. There's value to be added here. And let's make this into a business. So this is all we have to focus on, and it can feed our families. I don't have to go get another thing. Let's create the thing that we want to create. And so it's been really awesome.
Wow, that is really cool. And I've really seen in my own life and through talking to different friends and other leaders and stuff, that is a huge need to have deep discipleship in community with other men and really being able to discuss deeper issues and sin and challenges and really open up to what we're facing in our own lives and how we can encourage each other, build each other up, sharpen each other, and pray for one another and not just talk about the weather. and the sports team or whatever.
So that's one of my favorite things to say is, hey, I have enough people to talk sports and weather with that this is not. And I want to also be clear for the ladies out there, we are looking at starting a women's group. Not that either one of us will lead, but we're talking to our wives specifically or anybody who's interested in running, because it's impactful and powerful for everybody. But our wives benefit, right? And to your point, Daniel, our wives and our children benefit because as leaders, we are refining and sharpening ourselves to be better in that environment as well. Yeah. So they're direct beneficiaries of us becoming better ourselves.
So have you found that a certain size group is best, or do you have multiple groups or just one group, or what? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes, we have 2 groups going right now. We just started our second group. Our first group started with 10 individuals, not including the 3 of us as the founders. So there was 13 total in our first group of men that we started back in February of this year. And then we recently just opened up our next group. We're calling them houses. So House 1, we opened up in August, and there are 14 members of that group. So I think the smaller group, is better because you're going to have more intimate conversations and relationships that are built out of that. Our target was like 10 to 15 per group for our houses. So yeah, it's been good so far.
Yeah, that's really good. I've done iron sharpens iron groups before where I get 6 to 8 guys, and over about a 6-month period, we go really deep, and that's been very impactful. And I think it's something that we as men, but then once we commit to it, then we're like, okay, we're all in. And then it's like, oh my goodness, like God can really use these other men to really sharpen me, hold me accountable, and help me grow even. Like we've seen the most amount of growth during those period of time where we're really encouraging and building each other up. So yeah, I love it. This is really cool.
Yeah, it's funny because we're all kind of type A, business, entrepreneurial, quite a few military veteran members in these groups. And it's funny because we are always it almost seems like we're always like one-upping each other, like trying to oh, you had a family meeting. Now you're like, have this cool family crest. Oh, look at me. Well, I'm going to do something even better. And so it just forces us to be intentional with our actions and actually become better husbands, better dads, better leaders.
Almost like spurring one another on towards good deeds or something. Wow.
That's right. Crazy, right?
So can you guys tell me more about Storehouse 310 Ventures and what you guys are doing with real estate now?
Yeah. So Storehouse 310 Ventures was the original turnkey business that we started, that we described. That has morphed into a couple of things, which has been a huge blessing. But we have a lending branch that's kind of come off of that, which has been amazing to free up our time.
Is that like hard money mostly?
Yes. Yep. And then we still sell those houses to our network on the back end in that same area in Milwaukee that we had previously been focused. Our efforts have been focused on. And now locally, now that we're finally together, we're in the same state. We've taken on a pretty awesome project down in Canyon City, which is a significant rehab. So we're in the middle of that project and have done a couple other deals in that area, looking to do more deals. And so now because we do love real estate, we love that, as Stu described it earlier, all those elements of it. And so we're going to continue doing those things. But I think the focus here locally is going to be Stu and I doing things for us, for fun, for our family, and maybe some partnerships with some very close, tightly vetted individuals. But the preponderance of the effort is really the Storehouse 310 effort, the Mastermind effort, and all of our energy, a lot of our energy, I'd say 90%, 10%, 20% is going to real estate. But really the preponderance of our effort is going to creating the curriculum. We've got this amazing curriculum for the Mastermind and setting up speakers and engagements and ways to serve. And we have our first in-person coming up September 12th, which is going to be absolutely amazing to get these guys together. And yes, that's where most of our Storehouse efforts are going, and just trying to strategically think what we want this thing to be, because we do feel that God is going to bless that effort and hopefully change a lot of dudes' lives.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm really excited for you guys. So where do you see that going? Is that something that you want to continue to expand or go deeper with the groups that you have, or what? Cast a little vision for me.
Go ahead, Dave. You're that like 50,000 foot.
Oh, okay.
You're the visionary.
It's funny because we're working through that right now, and we're trying to apply the same level of, not even the same level. This is significantly more time. We're jumping off this call and going right into a strategic call for the mastermind. And really, there's a couple things. One, it's refining what we want out of life. And what's so amazing is that I think we've landed on where we have gifting and where we want to be. And there's also potential to grow a successful business out of it. But what do we individually want out of that, right? Like I personally could sit in back-to-back mastermind calls with 15 houses and do that. And that's my daily battle rhythm. And I love it. Well, Stu's a little bit different. So he's like, dude, I'm in like 2 and it's exhausting because there's a lot of emotions. It's very deep. It's very intentional. And so we're really refining and having to look within how we want to create this thing. But I personally envision it being, we love creating opportunities for others to thrive. So I think where we're headed is we want to bring people in that are as dedicated and love this mission as much as we do, to be coaches that we would pay very good salary that they could live off of and thrive financially, and then start opening houses that they run. And whether that's 5 houses, and we're thinking from a business perspective, and Stu's like, oh, we could do profit split, blah, blah, blah. He has spreadsheets. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you just tell me the answer. But I think creating opportunities for others to also thrive, but while also maintaining this business and building it, because we want to scale, right? We want to scale, not in the traditional sense of money and business, but in the sense of the more dudes that we can get into this group. And because the magic happens, it's not Stu and I, because we're limited by what we're limited by. The other men pouring into each other is magic. Yeah. It is absolute magic. It's jet fuel. And so the more we can create those opportunities, and realistically, we can't be in all that, but the more we can create those opportunities is really where we want to be. And so what that looks like, I don't know. I'm a glass is always full. This terrible thing happened, but this is what we learned from it kind of guy. So I see this being, I feel that we don't even have the tiniest inkling of what this could be where we currently are. That's where I am.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, like David said, there's some examples that we could use so far that we have from our original group. One of the men in our group is the CEO of a nonprofit organization down in Mexico, and they help this orphanage down there. I see missions trips within this mastermind going down to support that orphanage in Mexico, right? We have another individual who just retired as a Navy SEAL after 20 years, and he is helping a youth church group start youth soccer in San Diego, in like southern San Diego, around the border of Mexico. I see us running retreats and running soccer camps for underprivileged youth for the summer, doing soccer, like just stuff like that. That's just so exciting to us that has potential. And oh, by the way, we are pouring into this donor advice fund that we created. 10% off the top coming in from our real estate, from our mastermind, from our lending, from all these opportunities, for all these buckets that are filling into this donor advice fund. And then we can just go pour fuel on the fire to help all these different missions.
That's good. That's awesome. So encouraging to hear how God has worked in your life and what you guys are doing, what you guys are up to. So to kind of wrap up, I just have a few questions about what you guys are doing right now, as far as like, what books do you recommend? What kind of things can we do that will move us towards, I guess, taking the next step in whether that be in our generosity, in our business, in pursuing God's kingdom?
Yeah. And you start asking Stu and I about books, man, you're going to get into a whole nother podcast. But I think for me personally, I think all this stuff starts with knowing and acknowledging who you are and who God created you to be. And I think that I think too few of us spend too little time in really trying to dig deep in who we are. We're so influenced by, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or your mom or your dad or whatever, we're so influenced by we're concerned about what others think we should be. And I'll tell you, since I've started really being just so introspective and intentional, my confidence is also, and I am who I am. And I believe God created me to be who I am. And I'm not perfect and I have lots of flaws, but I feel very secure in my skin and who I am. And that empowers me to move forward on things that some people may say, well, that's really risky. I don't know. Well, not to me, because I think God, the Storehouse Mastermind, there's probably way more people out there that are saying, I don't know, than there are being like, go get it. It's going to be successful. And I have no doubts, but I believe that has come from not looking at business opportunities and this, that, and the other. It's come from spending time with myself, and it's come from spending time with God and being like, God, is this, and having faith to know that the door will close if he doesn't want me to do that.
Right.
And so if the door remains open, then we're doing something right. And we're doing something that I believe is blessed. And so my point to that is I recommend first and foremost, the Bible, right? That is a daily habit. That is, if I only read one thing the day, it's Stuart and I hold each other accountable through a Bible app and track each other's reading. So we're doing that, but
ahead of him.
Oh,
I'm just saying.
No, you're not. I'm a day ahead. If I look on the app today, it actually says, David, you are one day ahead.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, not important. But I think you have to, I personally believe, and maybe it's the English major me, I read everything. I read fiction because fiction is going to present things to you to force you in a decision-making process of what would I do in this fictitious thing? And it opens a different part of your mind. I'm reading Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. That book has been informative and also transformative for me because it's not about the millionaire part that I was concerned about. It's the mindset and the way he challenges you to look at different things, he being T. Harv Eker. And it's been amazing. Some of the tidbits that I've gained from that and just the concept of your financial blueprint and addressing that, right? Like these things, when you dig into why you think the way you think, you can see where you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I think it takes time, man. I think you really need to dedicate time. And then once you figure out how you believe you were created, it empowers you to move forward, right? It gives you the passion and the confidence to move forward. Otherwise, you just kind of, in my opinion, you're just kind of floating. And I've been there before too, right? Like I had no problem getting out of the Navy. I haven't even thought twice about it.
Yeah.
I knew I was getting out at 20. Stu and I spent a ton of time talking about it. Zero regrets. But that was approached very confidently because of all the time we spent talking about the things we want from life and how we believe we're gifted.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll give you a few answers that are less squishy than
engineer answer. Go.
Yeah, I'll give you my engineer answer. So we had a man on our podcast. His name is John Reinhardt. He wrote a book called Gospel Patrons. Highly, highly recommend it for anyone that's listening to your podcast because that's directly in the genre for where we're talking about here, using business to create impact in the kingdom. He also wrote a second book that's more of a small group type discussion that's called Giving Together. And you actually do it as a group. And there's questions at the end of each chapter and there's challenges. Like he challenges you to go like sell stuff, right? Like go and sell stuff in your house that you're not using anymore and then take that money and then give it away to charities. It's awesome. So we both have read those books. So we did that small group together with the Giving Together. Amazing dude who's just on a major mission.
I love that. Yeah, I got to hear him on the Finish Line podcast, I think it was, and just incredible story there. So definitely hope to get him on this podcast.
Yeah. One other book that I would plug and that has been something that we've really has been life-changing for us, not only from the relationship that we've created with the author and his wife, but the Go Giver series by John David Mann and Bob Burg. We were blessed to have both of them on the podcast at different points, but that book is such I talk about giving time and you talk about the principles to live by that are very outwardly focused. And then one other one I don't want to forget is The Wealthy Gardener.
Oh yeah.
Awesome book too. Really good book. John Saforic had him on the podcast as well and just was very enlightening. And talk about that was a really, and I didn't realize this until the podcast, but it was a love letter from him to his son. And so just really cool. Two other books that have been huge and impactful for us.
Wow. Well, it has been a pleasure to have you guys on. Is there anything that we can be praying for you or anything that we can do to further your mission or the vision that God's put on your heart?
Yeah, man. All prayer is welcome and cherished. But I think specifically, we have a big mission for the Storehouse Mastermind, and that's really addressing this epidemic, what we believe is an epidemic of broken and fatherless homes. And it's a huge just cause. This term I stole from another really good book, The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. but just, the prayer that God will use, not Stu and I, but use the mastermind to be, it makes me emotional even thinking about the potential impact, but to be a true light in this thing that both Stu and I experienced as kids, right? Growing up. And now as a dad, I take it so differently because I can't imagine how hard it was for my parents to let me right to go to the other parent. For Stu, I can't imagine. I never want to experience what our parents must have experienced because of that deep love for our own children. But that being said, I think just prayer that God uses and blesses and gives wisdom is really what would be a huge benefit because we need a lot of wisdom. So how to just build and touch and create something that has enduring impact.
Stu and David, thank you so much for coming on the show. Let me pray for you and then we'll jump out of here. All right, let's pray. God, I thank you and praise you for my brothers, Stu and David. God, I pray that you would be with them, that you'd guide them, that you would give them wisdom as they forge ahead with this mastermind that they're creating. Lord, I thank you for the 2 masterminds that have already been created and the life change that's going on in those groups. I pray that you would further your kingdom, that you would develop fathers and husbands, and that you would use these men and the tools that they're creating to draw people closer to you. That you would get all the glory, that we would worship you, and that we would be able to take one step closer to being a true disciple of you. In Christ's name I pray.
Amen. And hey, before we sign off, Daniel, thank you, man. Thank you and David for what you guys do, your commitment to serving the Lord, to building the kingdom, to taking your substantial gifts and your substantial skill sets to doing something special, man. Your podcast, praying on the podcast and standing up for your faith and honoring your God in such an incredible way that I believe we're called to do. I just want to thank you guys, encourage you to keep it up. And I truly believe that God's going to bless your efforts. I mean, you guys literally dedicate your lives to finding opportunities to give and build the kingdom. I mean, come on, man. That's pretty rad.
Pretty rad.
Keep it up.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show and thanks for your time.
Thanks to you, bud.
All right. Until next time.
Thank you, Daniel.